Hi, so this is 35 part 1, and because it's getting later and I'm getting tired, um, I only read part of the notes before I did this, so I'm going to be winging the second half. So if I'm really slow, I'm sorry. As a good student, I should read it first, but it's late. So, okay, so after Pearl Harbor, the U.S. wants revenge on Japan. But the ABC 1 agreement says that we need to get Germany first. I'm cold. I'm going to put my robe on. Sorry. I'm cold. The get Germany strategy is what the military was built on, but there was opposition from commanders in the Pacific and the Chinese and the Australian allies because they were all worried about Japan. The Allies had more supporters than the Axis powers, and the U.S. was potentially the mightiest military power on Earth, but the Allies could be really awesome, but they needed time because they, especially like USA, hadn't prepared anything. So the U.S. had to get arms, food, clothes, transport their troops, and send munitions to the Allies. During this war, there was more of a sense of national unity than World War I. That might have been due to ignorance. People didn't really know what the war was about. The World War II did speed the assimilation of many ethnic groups. There was also no government witch hunting of minority groups. But there was the plight of 110,000 Japanese Americans, which they were put in like internment camps where they had to work. I don't know, not work. But anyway, it's like concentration camps, kind of. Just not quite as severe. The Executive Order number 9066 said this was unnecessary and unfair. In Korematsu versus the U.S., it held the constitutionality of Japanese relocation. And 4 years later, reparations of 20,000 were paid to the Japanese for what we put them through. There are many parts of the New Deal that were wiped out by conservatives. FDR said he was going to focus on the war and not the New Deal right now. He's going to be a war president. When we were producing all those things needed for the war, we had massive military orders. We created the War Productions Board, which made lots of weaponry. Henry J. Kaiser was like the Miracle Man shipbuilder. He built a ton. And the Ward's Production Board halted the manufacture of non-essential items like cars. A lot of like clothing and stuff. Like you don't buy clothes. You save your money and ration and everything for the war. There was a national speed limit and there was gasoline rationing. And farmers increased their output. Agricultural machinery and improved fertilizers were occurring, so you can make probably better crops than the soldiers. There was full employment in scarce consumer goods. What did I write? There's full employment, and scarce consumer goods fueled inflation. The Office of Price Administration brought ascending prices under control with extensive regulations, so there wouldn't be crazy inflation. The National War Labor Board imposed ceilings on wage increases. And labor unions didn't like the ceilings on wages because they want to make money, and they're saying you can't. They're putting like a maximum wage on there. So there are a lot of labor walkouts. There's a big one with the United Mine Workers. The Smith-Connolly Anti-Strike Act authorized the federal government to seize and operate tied-up industries, and so you don't strike against government-operated industry. Now we come with, I call them the blue pages. I think this one was about Japanese. I don't know how important it is for me to talk about this. I have Matthew Perry written down. I'll be honest, I'm not quite sure who he is. But he has something to do with the Japanese. Probably. Sorry. So Japan, they work to kind of be the political and economic equal to the U.S. There's a steep land tax that drew many farmers off their land. Um, yeah. And between 1885 and 1925, roughly 200,000 Japanese migrated to Hawaii, and 100, I'm really tired. 180,000 went to the U.S. mainland. And the Japanese immigrants were smarter and wealthier than the European immigrants, so they were very useful to us. Japan did promote women's migration, unlike China. The Hawaii sugarcane, they worked in Hawaii at sugar canes. In the U.S., they worked with railroads, food, fruit, veggie, and cannery industries. In 1910, the Japanese produced 70% of the CCA's strawberries, and in 1960 produced 95% of snap beans and more than half of tomatoes. So the Japanese gave us food. A potato king, 15 million. So I have a feeling that the Japanese made lots of potatoes and gave us 15 million, and that's my guess of what that means. And to fight racism, the Japanese encouraged their children to learn English and to study hard and go to college. So the Japanese really did want to assimilate. They weren't against us. They weren't really necessarily planning on going back home. They liked it here. Now we go. We're getting all the soldiers and stuff. 15 million men and 26,000 women were enlisted to help in some way. There are more now women in arms. The WAAC was the Army, the WAVES was the Navy, and the SPARs were the Coast Guard. The draft left factories and farms short of workers, so the women had to kind of take over. In 1942, there was an agreement with Mexico that brought workers, or braceros, I don't know how to pronounce it, but those were Mexican peasants that worked on farms and stuff. The Bracero, I don't know, program outlived the war actually for 20 years. More than 6 million women took on jobs outside the home. There were also now a lot of government-created daycares because no one was there to watch the women's kids. So there were about 3,000 daycares created, and it foreshadowed the revolution of women's roles in society. The majority of women did keep traditional roles, though. But after the war, two-thirds of women left the workforce. Migrations happened during the war. People were sucked into boomtowns, and there was an economic stimulus in the South. 1.6 million blacks looked for war plant jobs, but tensions arose over employment, housing, and segregated facilities. A. Philip Randolph threatened with the Negro March on Washington. Fair Employment Practices Commission monitored, I can't read my handwriting, monitored order forbidding discrimination in defense industries. I think that's what that says. Fair Employment Practice, it made sure that the Fair Employment Practices Commission made sure that industries were not discriminating the workers. There was a Congress of Racial Equality. There was a northward migration of African Americans, which accelerated the war. There was an invention of the mechanical cotton picker, which did bring a lot of the African Americans north. In 1970, half of all blacks lived outside the South. There's also an exodus of Native Americans from reservations. War work. They worked in the war. They did some, the Navajo code talkers. They were Indians. 25,000 Native Americans served in armed forces. And the code talkers. They transmitted radio messages in their native language, so the Germans and stuff couldn't decode them. Now, on the home front, war invigorated the economy. Corporation profits rose $6 billion. December 7th, 1944 was the biggest sales day ever for Macy's. There was a lot of government interventionism, and people depended on the government to run the business. The war bill was big, $330 billion, and only 2/5 were paid from current revenues. And so the national debt skyrocketed. The rising sun in the Pacific. The Japanese attacks on Guam, Wake, Philippines. Okay, there were Japanese attacks on Guam, Wake, Philippines, ports of Hong Kong, and Malayal. Cut the Burma Road. Or is it Malaya? Sorry. Ports of Hong Kong and Malaya. Cut Burma Road, and the Dutch East Indies were attacked. The General Douglas MacArthur set up a defense position at Bataan near Monica, and 20,000 troops held off attacks until April 9th, 1942, which was the Bataan Death March, where they collected all the prisoners of war. The new, I was like, prisoners of war. New Guinea and the Solomon Islands. I just listed those. Probably important. Let's see if we find out. There was a naval battle at Coral Sea, which the U.S. caused many casualties. Japan next planned to seize the Midway Islands. So the Battle of Midway happened, and Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, Admiral Raymond A. Spruance were kind of in charge of this. And it was a pivotal victory, but fear of Japanese invading the U.S. was still big. The Alcan Highway. I don't have time to look that up on the video, but you should probably look it up. I don't know what it is. Here, it's gonna bug me if I don't look it up. Okay. Alcan Highway. Which is in Alaska. So it was probably a way to get to Alaska without safety. I'm writing about it. If you can remember that. In 1942, American forces gained a toehold on the Guadalcanal Island, and American supplies shortened because of Japan. And American and Australian forces under General MacArthur were hanging on in New Guinea, and they used the island hopping technique. Attu and Kiska were retaken. The Marianas, there was an assault on June 19, 1944. There was a battle of the Philippine Sea, and there was something called Suicide Cliff on Saipan, because people would jump off of it. And aircraft carriers, they made it possible for round-the-clock bombing of Japan. I'm sorry those notes are really choppy at the end. I find my notes get choppier as they go along because I'm getting tired of writing. But that is 3-5 part 1. There's only one more left. Yay. And then I still need a study more before I go to bed. But hopefully this is helping you. And if it's not, I'm sorry. But yeah. Bye.